So, our topic that we're going to be focusing on this week is recovery. And I honestly believe this is probably something that needs more attention than what we typically give it. And that's why we want to take just a little bit of time each day this week and review with our classes the importance of recovery. I know this is something that we talk about quite a bit, especially as coaches, primarily at the beginning of classes when we're doing our mobilization and our activation, kind of talking about the importance of getting blood flow to the muscles that are going to be used, and then stretching and mobilizing, and then also activating those muscle groups that we plan on using in the workout. And we do that primarily for injury prevention. And if you've been with us for a while, you've probably noticed maybe a shift that's taken place over maybe the past like 9 to 12 months where we're being extremely proactive with our warm-ups, almost incorporating more of kind of like a prehab philosophy to our warm-ups, so that we don't need our athletes ending up having to have rehab because they've injured themselves. It's almost kind of one of those intuitive things like, why wait to do movements and exercises that could help you recover from an injury after you get injured? Why not just do them at the beginning instead of waiting to get injured to have that happen? And the more I thought about this and the more I talked about this with some of our coaches, the more I realized that this is something that we need to really drive home as a box. And I find it kind of fitting that this is on the back end of a surgical procedure I had done to replace my knee, because getting ready to go down that path right now of rehabbing and trying to get back uh, to where I used to be. You may or may not know this about me, but um, I used to be an athlete. I played baseball and football, and then I was in the bodybuilding community for probably a solid 10 years before I ever found CrossFit. And I really didn't find CrossFit until I was 30 years old, which obviously for some of our older members, they're probably laughing and smiling a little bit right now, thinking, oh, wow, 30 is old. But I remember the time in my life when I really didn't need to warm up and I really didn't need to stretch out. In fact, uh, like on chest day, when I was a personal trainer at Gold's Gym, my warm up was, you know, like a lightweight. Like, let's do 135 for 10 reps, and that's my warm up. And that's kind of what I was. And when I found CrossFit, I'm kind of ashamed to say it, but that's kind of how it was with CrossFit. I'd do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this, and, kind of pull the quad back and then just go and start with a light weight or whatever, and then progressively get heavier. And it did not take me very long at all to find out that if that was the only thing I was going to be doing to warm up or prepare for a workout, I was going to be suffering later on in the week, um, because my joints hurt, my muscles were sore, my joints hurt, and things just did not feel right. So we've really put a priority on warming up, but what I'd like to spend some time doing now is talking about what we need to do to recover on the back end of things. So each day this week, we're going to talk about one kind of recovery tool that we can use as athletes to better prepare ourselves for future workouts. And to be completely honest with you, if you're coming to class 2 or 3 times a week, um, the 10 to 15 minutes worth of stretching and mobilization that we're doing before class is probably adequate for warm up. But on the cool down side of things, I think we need to be trying to match that as well. So if we're spending 10 to 15 minutes warming up, we need to be spending 10 to 15 minutes cooling down. Uh, and that doesn't necessarily have to be, immediately following the class, but making it a priority to stretch and mobilize after a workout is very, very important. We ramp the heart rate up, we really stress the system, and then a lot of times just because of schedule or what have you, it's kind of like, all right, well, we're going to work out for the day and I'm done. But how do we get back to the gym day after day after day and not just be progressively feeling worse every day, but being able to come in and attack each workout every day feeling good? And I've had this conversation with several athletes now who used to come 2 or 3 times a week, and now they're coming three, four, five. We even have some athletes that are coming 6 times a week. And I think it's so important that if you're going to add in training volume, maybe you're going from 2 days a week to 3 days a week, or maybe you're going from 3 days a week to 4 days a week, or whatever. If you're going to add training in, you have to balance the equation with recovery. And I've been doing CrossFit for about 10 years now, and I can honestly say that there have been times where I've really increased the amount of training that I'm doing, whether it's extra cardio in the morning or doing the auxiliary workout during open gym or what have you. But my recovery has stayed the same. So my training volumes drastically increased, but my recovery has stayed the same. And my body has really paid the price for that. So if you're one of those people that, maybe you're adding in an extra class a week, or maybe you've recently gone from 3 times a week to 4 times a week, or 4 times a week to unlimited, I can't encourage you enough to make sure that you're adding back additional recovery protocols to your training. And I'm just going to say, just kind of off the top of my head right now, that for every hour of training that you do, you need to be doing at least 15 minutes worth of recovery protocols to kind of balance that out. So, if you're coming to 4 or 5 classes a week, you're sticking around afterwards, you're doing some auxiliary, whatever, maybe you're working on some strength stuff or some skill work, I think minimum 15 minutes of recovery a day, and ideally more like 20 or 30 minutes of recovery a day. And I can tell you, you're going to get away with it for a month. You're going to get away with it for 3 months. You might be lucky enough to get away with it for 6 or 9 months, but I promise you, at some point, injury is going to occur. And some of you are sitting here right now watching this video and you're like, yeah, that's me. I've already had the injury, or what have you. Now, I can't promise you that you're never going to get injured. I just can't do that. I honestly feel like CrossFit is a very safe sport, especially if you have good coaches. But if the training volume is increasing and you're not also increasing the recovery that goes along with that, it's going to happen. I realize this first video is probably going to be a little bit longer. The next ones throughout this week are going to be a little bit shorter, where we focus on each kind of recovery tool. But the first one, we've posted a link for it on Wodify, and it's called a Voodoo Band. And the link for it is on Rogue's website, but you can see here that I actually have an off-brand, which basically does the same thing. I would say this is maybe like 1.5 to 2 inches in diameter, and maybe, I don't know, 6 to 8 feet long. And this is something that you could buy pretty quickly, and you can add this into your own personal protocols. You could do this at night when you're watching your favorite show, or when you're hanging out with your friends or whatever. It's just called a Voodoo Band. And there's two kind of rules that I follow with the Voodoo Band. It's called the rule of 50-50. So if you take the band and you have maximum tension, let's say this is 100% tension, you'd give it about 50% tension. And then make sure I can show this correctly, as you're wrapping the band around, above, or below the joint, you want to get about 50% coverage. So you don't want it, you don't want to be wrapping the band so that the seam is touching. You want to get about 50% coverage. And you can do that on any joint. So I'm just going to try to use my elbow as a quick example here because I'm sitting on the floor. But, they like to say to wrap away from the joint or toward the heart. So, if I was going to do, if I had some forearm issues, maybe some wrist issues or some forearm issues, I could start at the joint. And then all I would need to do is kind of get one. Obviously, if you have a buddy or somebody that could help you with this, it would be a little bit easier. But one kind of like wrap. Remember, we want to get about 50% coverage. Once you kind of get it on there, then you can start putting that tension in there. Remember, 50% coverage, 50% tension. And you don't have to wrap, the entire forearm. Like I said, just kind of start at the elbow joint and work down, maybe 4, 5, 6 times around. And then once it's there, I can take it through range of motion, open my hand, rotate my fingers, in and out, wrist flexion and extension. I wouldn't leave it on for more than about a minute at a time. And then when you take it off, leave it off for about 2 minutes before you put it back on. And then you can do that 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a sitting. What this is going to do is it's going to occlude blood flow. It's going to trap blood flow to the joint. So blood's not going to be able to get in there. And a lot of times injuries or like sore muscles or sore joints, the reason why it's sore is because there's inflammation that's built up in the joint. And so you wrap it and make it really tight. No blood flow can get to the joint. Take it through its range of motion, and then as soon as you take the band off, all of the blood rushes into the site. And the idea or theory behind it is that it flushes out that inflammation, that buildup of inflammation. I don't know if you guys can see or not, but my knee is still relatively sore and swollen from the surgery. And if I stand on it for more than about 5 minutes, it gets really, really swollen, but I lay down, I elevate it, I put my Voodoo Floss around it, and within just a couple of minutes, I can get the swelling to go down drastically. The other nice thing about the Voodoo Floss is it can be very easily placed in a backpack, a gym bag, something like that. And I promise you, for those of you that have elbow pain or ankle pain or like me, knee pain, this thing can be your best friend. So each day this week, we're going to try to present a new recovery tool. This isn't necessarily, hey, go out and buy everything we tell you you need to buy and spend all of this money. But these are just things that we've used and learned and liked. And we wanted to make sure that we're making a priority for this in our classes. If you guys have any questions about any of this stuff this week, please pull a coach aside, ask us, talk to us, questions. We want you guys to be safe and we want you to be healthy. And it doesn't do anybody any good to come in and smash yourself on a 17-minute Metcon. Don't do any stretching or mobilization or recovery and then not be able to squat for the next 2 weeks because your knee is so inflamed, or fill in the blank. So hopefully the Voodoo Floss will be a good tool for some of you guys, and I can't wait to share some of our other recovery tips with you this